Hey, welcome to another episode of Andy's Self-Help. Today, I'm doing something a little bit different. Usually, I try to break down little facets of what I've learned to kind of hopefully make a healthy message for others to follow. I'm not claiming to be an expert on any of this. These are just the lessons I've learned for myself over these past videos I've done. I also have a podcast called Chatty Patties, where it's just a little bit more of a relaxed form. And the same shit, though. Me just doing, I guess, motivational stuff, but really it seems more like life coach. But at the same time, it's just some idiot like me who has gone through emotional struggles, has tried to really break it down step by step and understand it himself. And hopefully I can give advice to someone else that can take it and learn and spread the message as well. That's the goal anyways. So I'm not claiming to be an expert on anything. Now, today's episode is about Myers-Briggs personality type indicator. I love this test. I love this tool. You know what? Fuck the test. Actually, the tests are terrible. I should not have said that. The tests are asinine due to the fact that Myers-Briggs is just a tool. It's just to help you understand that you are one of 16 personality types. And that type is just a rough outline of who you are. Now, the reason I say rough outline is because you got to chalk it up to experience, all right? We are embodiments of our past, our present, and ultimately our future. And how you grew up, the trauma you went through, the success you went through, the joy you went through, those memories are completely different from probably anybody else on the planet. Sometimes you find similarities, sometimes you don't. But either way, these shape you for the future, and they shape your emotions, your interests, and your overall path. Therefore, this personality type, just like a horoscope, is not going to determine every facet of who you are to a T. That's impossible. Humans are too diverse. So, what I'm telling you is, I am not an expert. Sorry, I wanted to do the clapping thing. That'd be funny. But I'm not claiming that this is going to solve your issues, but it'll hopefully help you understand yourself better. That's the ultimate goal I had when I actually started researching this about a year ago, maybe. And I'm not, once again, claiming to be an expert. It's just something I'm passionate about. I know quite a bit about. I definitely know that I'm not stupid on the subject, but I'm not claiming to know everything. So take what I say and then go research it yourself. Prove me wrong. I actually love that shit. But go research it yourself. Get your own understanding. I'm trying to get you into the door. That's all I'm doing here. So let's get into it. Myers-Briggs is a type indicator that basically states that everybody is broken down into 16 types. Now, that's not a bad thing. It's not saying that the world is only 16 people. Remember, your experiences make you your own person. This is just a rough outline to help kind of categorize people. And what I like about it is the fact that when I'm in a conversation with somebody, from what I've known, I can start sizing them up a little bit better. And not even a con way, just trying to gather the audience, get the energy, really understand the mood of what's going on. So that way you know what kind to avoid with them. Maybe you know some of the social issues associated with that type, and therefore you don't have to go down that lane and stress them out. This is especially present in the final function. And I'm about to go into this. I've actually, as you can see, have this little board here. I'm going to scoot this closer here in a second. That kind of explains everything I'm about to go over. But it's a great tool to help you get closer to the people that you're already, in life with, like the ones who are close to you, who genuinely you want to be there for the next couple of years to come. And this will help you understand their struggles, their way of thinking, what's going on in their mind, and it will help you understand them while they also understand you better, which ultimately makes a closer relationship, better bond, So let's get into it. Let me drag this a little bit closer I know it's kind of stupid that I'm dragging stuff in here, but I'm not a professional. I just started this. Let's do it. So MBTI, Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. There are 16 types. I've listed them below. I'll go over it. And each type consists of 4 functions, which are the Jungian functions, also on this list. But I'm going to go down this in order because I'm not a very structured person. So I'm trying to give myself a little bit of a base outline, hopefully keep myself on track so I don't ramble as much. So there are 16 types. Each type has an extroverted version and an introverted version. So the ENTJ has the INTJ as their introverted equivalent. 2 different types, but very similar in nature. A lot of times when it comes to types, INTJ to ENTJ, the ENTJ is just louder. That's it. There are definitely differences, and I'll get to that in a minute. If you hung with both of these types together for an entire day, you'd definitely see the differences, but you'd also see a bunch of similarities. And that's what makes it kind of cool, in my opinion. Just you kind of see why you're extroverted compared to the introvert person who might be your best friend. So ENTJ, ENTP, ENFJ, ENFP, ESFJ, ESFP, ESTP, ESTJ, INTJ, INTP, INFJ, INFP, ISFJ, ISFP, ISTP, ISTJ. As you can see, they kind of all share kind of a ring to them. And that's because the Myers-Briggs type indicates through 4 letters who you kind of are in a base outline. So let's kind of go over it in a different way. Let's go ENTJ. E as an extrovert, N as intuitive, T as in thinking, and J as in judging. Let's go to a different type. ISFP. So introverted, sensing, feeling, perceiving. And so what it's going to come down to is you're one of these two. You're either an I or an E, an S or an N, an F or a T, a J or a P. Completely different, and they all mean something. So let's go over that too. And then this whole video, by the way, is just a rough introduction. I'd like to do more in the future, broaden out, really explain each function in detail, the types in detail, the differences and similarities between them, and the struggles they go through. This is just a rough outline to hopefully see if you're invested in this at all. So let's go over it. Extroverts compared to introverts. That's a pretty simple solution there. Extroverts are extroverts. They go out more. They get their energy from the world, from the people. That's what gets them pumped up and ready to go. I'm an extrovert. I love talking to people. No shame in that. I love being out in the world, but I'm also very reclusive. And a lot of people deal with that too. They're extroverted introverts, and that is kind of a thing in play here. And I can explain that more in detail. For instance, perceivers are more likely to be introverted over judgers. However, judgers can be extremely introverted. Just on average, Ps are more about having less structure, more freedom, and overall a more better sense of self by having the freedom to explore other options. Where Js like having structure. Js like having a schedule. And because of that, they get their introverted time, by being reclusive, of course, but they usually are a bit more progressive in what they need. They have more, higher taste in life in their own right. But at the same time, they don't. This is where it gets really complex, is everybody's really different. Like, if you're an INTJ, which is technically qualified as the architect, then you already have kind of a higher cost of living within your mind, but you can also live within lower means as well, because you live in your head more than anything. So, introverts, more quiet usually, a little bit more reserved. They can be talkative, but on average, you'll find them needing more solace and alone time. Extroverts don't need as much alone time, including the most reclusive types. They can be anything they need to be. They can go out, have fun, be loud, be boisterous, anything. But introverts can do it too. Extroverts are just more likely, and it's a natural mode for them. So, intuitive over sensing. Intuitive just means more imaginative. And by imaginative, not saying more creative or anything like that, just more off the wall. Usually it's bigger picture thinkers, intuitives, and by bigger picture, it doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. Bigger picture just means looking farther down the road at the ultimate goal, where today's today is not as important. These details don't mean as much. It's about the future. So sensing people are more about today. They're more about the here, what, now, what, and why. That's it. Just they want to hear about your day. However, they are still capable of exploring theories. They're capable of really looking down the future and the road, but they're more present in today's moment, which makes them a lot of times better at social settings, especially in business. So intuitives, just more in their head. They like what if questions, hypotheticals. And by the way, I don't mean hypothetical as in, if Gandhi was alive, would he have caused more world change, or would they have found out that those little girls that he was hanging with, he'd be trialed and go to jail? Or, actually, I lost track of where I was going with that. Let me go back. I want to try that again. Intuitives are more, it's the conversation they're having is not really that where it's world changing. It could be something as simple as not the Gandhi thing, where like, if he was here today, would he change the world again? No, it could be just something as simple as, what if trucks could walk and talk? Like, what if cars was a thing? And just like that theory states, what if the humans died out and they adapted to being without humans and they grew faces? And that's more of the what if. Whereas sensors are more likely to talk about their day, their past experiences, and overall how to fix the world on a more logical scale over a what-if scale. It's more set in motion. So it's not a bad thing on either or. It just depends on what makes you better at that type. And so I'm rambling on this. Let's get going. This is why I actually made the chart, so I don't get off track within my head, which ruins the whole fucking flow. So let's go to thinking over feeling. And I'm going to go over all 4 functions in a quicker way in just a second. Just want to get through my own way. Thinker versus feeling. Thinkers are less attached to their emotions. Just on average, any of the types, they're more likely to go off logic over how they feel about it. Now, It's not to say that thinkers lack emotion. Matter of fact, thinkers are very emotional and feelers are very logical. But it's what you act on first. So thinkers are more likely going to find the more logical route with the less emotional implications because it's going to be the most effective route. However, that's what deals with them for their life. Just less emotional attachment means more gain. Now, every type is different on how they express this. Some thinkers, more likely, like the ISTP, are going to be better at sports because they're not. And that's, by the way, that doesn't mean they're the only ones. It's just on average, they're going to be better at sports because they're thinking it through. They're really in the moment of just thinking about it. There's no emotional attachments. It's more of a completionist thing. Whereas feelers are going to go off emotion, logic second. And by emotion, they're going to feel it first. They're going to probably be more comfortable with it. And they're going to apply it, whatever that situation may be. And then they'll make the logical outcome later. So remember, thinking is just logic first, then emotional attachment. Feelers, emotion first, then logic. Now, and you can see this in people real easily, especially in extroverts. Extroverted feelers are more likely to show the feelings like, ha ha, whoo, yeah. That's more of a feeler thing. Thinkers are more, truthfully, man, I'm a thinker. I kind of have the same fucking face. I'm sporadic if needed. I can show the emotion, be, really bouncy, but I don't think about it naturally. I do it because I enjoy it, and I am a little kid in a lot of ways. But that aside, let's go to perceiver versus judger. Perceiver is someone who, in general, perceives more of the world, and they have more of a desire for freedom on average with the types. Most perceivers are usually kind of hippie-ish in some right. Not all, okay, this is just an example, but they're going to be more free-spirited. They don't need a structure. They're more likely if you say, hey, man, I know we're leaving in 10 minutes, but do you want to go to the club? An extroverted EP would probably say, yeah, dude, totally. Let's do it, bro. I was going to do this other thing, but that sounds way more fun. Quick decisions. And they're better at it because they don't need a schedule to be happy. They're happy within the moment, usually. And this is for the introverted and extroverted versions. Where judgers, INTJ, INFJ, so on and so forth, are more structure-oriented. They like a routine. And perceivers like routine. They're just worse at it. Where judgers naturally gravitate towards a routine, a schedule, the more matter-of-fact, more on time, and more direct on average. Because they, I need my girlfriend in here. She's a judger. She understands it much better than me. I'm just giving you an off the top of my head type situation. So perceiver, more open-ended, less schedule-oriented, more about their personal freedom. Judgers, more time-oriented, more organized, like having a routine and schedule. They also like freedom, but they like to have a structured freedom. So those are just the 4 letters. Let's go down it again. Extroverts, usually loud, outgoing, talkative. Introverts, usually quieter, more reserved, but it can also be talkative. Intuitives, just more imaginative, live in their heads more, like what ifs, hypothetical questions, bigger picture. They're looking further down the road at a future they would like to create, but may not be able to. But because of this, they can usually come up with more creative off-the-wall strategies. Now, sensors can do it too. It's just intuitives are more likely to. So sensors are more about the here, what, now, when, and why, the average day-to-day basis. Therefore, when they make a decision, it's going to be something that can logically be done and efficiently be done without any what-ifs. It's matter of fact. And that's a good thing, because in business, that means you stay on fucking track. So then we go to thinker versus feeling. Thinkers, logic first, emotion second. Feelers, emotion first, logic second. And you can find a perfect equilibrium between all this. But it's what you're going to see first. And, here's an example. If you said to a thinker, hey, my boyfriend just cheated on me. What should I do? A thinker is going to immediately go, break up with him. He's not worth your fucking time. You can do better. You don't need him. He's a piece of shit. Fuck it. Move on. Forward. No emotional attachment. Just straight up telling you the most logical recourse, which is get the fuck away from him. Feeler. Remember, this is just an example. Everybody's very different, but it's just really broad example. Feeler. Hey, my boyfriend just broke up with me. Oh my God, are you okay? Do you need some support? You want to talk about it? Let's sit down. Let's really get this going. I really want to help you out. Fuck, man. That sucks. I've been there. Immediately going towards their emotional attachment towards it. However, this also goes into the next part of this, which is Jungian functions. Every type is made up of 4 of these, and there's 8 functions total, which is intuition, thinking, feeling, sensing. Hence, how this is all made up. So Each of those four types of functions is going to have an extroverted version and an introverted version. Both are completely different from each other. Now, what this would mean is, on this to actually organize it better, here's an example. Oh, by the way, extroverted intuition, introverted intuition, extroverted sensing, introverted sensing, extroverted feeling, introverted feeling, extroverted thinking, introverted thinking. So this goes over to look like this, the ENFP, which, by the way, if you want an example of an ENFP to understand a feeler, Robin Williams, George Carlin, those are two comedians, but ENFPs are good comedians. Kevin Smith is a modern day one, if you just want to see that kind of note. Some other ones are usually kind of hippie-ish. I can think of a bunch of examples, but I'm trying to stay on track here. I'm sorry. So ENFP is extroverted intuition first, introverted feeling second, extroverted thinking third, introverted sensing last. Now, this order is very important because your first function is going to be the one that you use naturally all day in the background, but it's your main source of running the computer. It's kind of like the motherboard of a computer. It's the heart and soul of it all, and everything else just kind of comes around it to empower it, which would be introverted feeling next. That's your, God, what the fuck is this function called? I don't know. I call it the vice president. It kind of feels like that. It's just your runner-up function. You'll notice this function, though, in play when you really learn about them more than this function. Because this function is just your natural running motor. This is the engine. These are the gears. So introverted feeling, after that, would be guiding the decisions based on this. Then extroverted thinking, which is your auxiliary function, which is one that you use when needed, but you naturally don't notice it and you don't use it as well. But you also do use it well, depending on later in life. So everybody's personality kind of defines themselves as they get older. And so you'll get better at using all these functions, which would bring us to the last function, introverted sensing, which is your demon function. And it's just that. It's a demon. You don't understand it that well. It plagues you. You're really bad at it. This function is what identifies how you freak out and why you freak out. Theme-wise, it's not like the exact issue, but it lets you know why you're freaking out over this, and you can kind of preemptively know when a breakdown's coming, depending on the situation. Okay, so one thing to notice, though, is extrovert intuition is an extroverted function, and since that is the first function, that means it's an extrovert, whereas the ISTP has TI first, an introverted function. And so if you lead with an introverted function, it means you're an introvert. It's just that simple. Easy enough to do it. Now, one thing to really notice is extroverted intuition pairs with introverted sensing. Introverted intuition pairs with extroverted sensing. Meaning, if you have extroverted intuition in your stack, you don't have introverted intuition in there. But you do have introverted sensing without extroverted sensing. It's how it pairs up. So extroverted feeling pairs with introverted thinking, and extroverted thinking pairs with introverted feeling. And it's just no way around it. It's how it goes. Can't do anything about it. But everybody does use all 8 functions, because the other 4 functions you don't use are called your shadow functions. And shadow functions are one that you only use within certain situations in life, but you're never naturally going to master them until roughly about your 50s is when you'll really start getting in touch with them if you're healthy enough. So let's keep going here. And one thing to discuss, and I'm going to go over each function. Extroverted intuition. Intuition is just imagination, by the way. Intuition is just imagination. It's just how you think. Sensing is kind of how you gather in the world, whether it be from the past or the present or the future. It's just, sight, sound, smell, touch, tradition, routine, depending on the function. And I'll explain more of that in a second. Extroverted feeling is your feelings are outward. By the way, that's a good way to think of these functions is intuition inward is your imagination inside. You're not letting out into the world. I'll explain once again more of that in a second. Extroverted sensing is you're gathering the real world over from your imagination. Introverted sensing is more you're gathering your sensory from the past. You're respecting old traditions. Therefore, you're going to rely more on what's been tried and true for yourself. And once again, depends on where it's at in the stack. I'll explain that in a second because the ENFP is a good example. Extroverted thinking is your thoughts out loud. So you're telling them your thoughts over your emotions. So extroverted feeling is when you talk, you say, I love this, I need this is the best, I hate you. You're more likely to hear descriptive terms over, kind of how you're hearing more of how they feel over how they're thinking over it. And so with introverted feeling, your feelings are inwards, which means you're going to let your thoughts out over your emotions first. And by the way, introverted feeling can be within a feeler. So it's not like you're not going to hear their emotional output, but they'll speak more with emotion on that part. while letting their thoughts out. And extroverted thinking would be in the same light as you're letting your thoughts out. Like, fuck you, this is lame, it's a waste of time, you're a waste of time. Kind of mean, but that's kind of how I always view extroverted thinking. Doesn't mean they're mean at all. Actually, a lot of my friends, extroverted thinking, introverted feeling, fucking amazing people, great people, but I just like Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, and he's an introverted feeler, extroverted thinker, and that's a prime fucking example if you've ever watched it. So that brings us to introverted thinking, which is you're thinking inwards, which means you're keeping your thoughts up there to construct a better way of getting to the deeper root of what you're trying to get with. So let's go over to the stack. I explained the order. So one thing I'm going to go over is your inferior function, your last function. This is fun because your last function, teaches you how you freak out, how you break down emotionally when shit gets too rough. This is a 20-minute video, dude. I'm about to wrap it up. Let you know it's rough. So TI as your last function, when you get too stressed out, and this is going to be your final function. If you're an extrovert, will be an introverted function. Your final function, if you're an introvert, will be an extroverted function. They make two different freakouts. So TI as the final function would mean that in stress, you logically can't think, and you'll start saying irrational shit, like to your girlfriend, you fat bitch. You don't mean it, but you can't think, and you're kind of throwing just shit out in the water. Your boss comes at you and he's like, you were terrible today. And you're just like, you know what? Fuck you. You're lame. You're gay. I can't stand you. Get the fuck away. You don't mean any of it. But you're not logically thinking. You maybe call him a poo-poo head. Who the fuck knows? Then you would go for like FE as another example. FE would be an introverted function, or would be an introvert's final function. And what that means is all these feelings, because they're not really good with their feelings if it's their last function, which means they just bottle it all up. And then if you betray their trust, or you disrespect them, or you cross a line, then all those emotions that have been bottled up for way too long explode. And it's angry, and they're usually logical about it. Because just to let everybody know, each final function, because remember there's 8 function, so only 2 types share the same final function. So it's the reason it's very easy to kind of describe someone this way, is only 2 types share it. So you'll be able to really recognize it fast. FE is like I said, explosion of emotion. They've been repressing it, which means they're probably going to be really logical when they throw it at you, and it's going to hurt. But it's just a big fucking Hulk explosion. It's like, ooh, you know. TE would be extroverted thinking. Now, the 2 types that have this as their final function are the hippie types. And I say hippie types because they're more nomadic usually. They crave and strive on freedom, and they just want to be a soul. Like that's it. They just want to be floating around doing their own thing. So when TE kicks in, extroverted thinking, they may lash out at people more, but in a very cold, non-emotional way, and they'll become more structured. They'll actually start going to work, and they'll start going to college, and they'll start fixing their life. But for them, that's not the natural route. And so it goes against them. It goes against the grain. And so it kind of ruins them. And for those types are the ones who thrive most in freedom. That's how they make their success. Introverted intuition as your final function, remember that would be an extroverted's final function, would be really bad at looking at the future. And I actually, you know what, I'm still so scattered. I didn't even go over every function. I went over SE, SI, FE, FI, TE, TI, NE, but I did not go over NI. And I didn't go over NE or NI that well, actually. So NE is just, you bounce around a lot. Everything gives you a new way of thinking, especially if it's your lead function and it's your imagination outwards, which means most likely when they look at a building, they're probably thinking of a ninja running across it, or they're really looking at the building coming alive and bouncing around, kind of like an old Disney cartoon. Whereas introverted intuition is looking at the world as one big connected web. They're usually more on point. They're much more structured and straightforward in what they say, because they're looking at the future. They're breaking it down as they work backwards, but they're more future oriented if it's higher in the stack. So if it's not high in the stack and it's your final function, that means you're not prepping for the future. You're not looking down the line, which means you're the person like Stifler from American Pie who parties all fucking day. You have the best time with your friends. And then all of a sudden when your friends go off to college and you have to get a real job and high school's over, you didn't mentally prepare yourself for that at all. And so this has now ruined you because you did not prep for the future. And that's what ruins them, is big fucking change. So that's your inferior. Your savior function, and we're going to go over these last four, and I'll cut it short. Your savior, like I said, you just don't think of it naturally running, and so each function and first is going to be different for every person. So extrovert intuition, when you lead with that, these type of people are very bouncy. And by bouncy, they bounce from subject to subject. It's hard to keep them on track because their final function's internal sensory, which means they're really bad with their own bodies, and they crave euphoria and nostalgia because they're bad at routine, which means they don't really stick to the past. They respect the past, but they're too busy looking to the future. So they're very unstructured. But extrovert intuition by itself is a plethora of ideas. Everything you see makes you creatively think of something different that causes you to broaden your knowledge and understand something on a different level. But an example of this would be, I actually been liking this. There's an example for extrovert intuition and introverted intuition. Extrovert intuition, if you looked at it as a river, this river would go down a path, and at all what feels like every 2 feet, a new path would branch off from a smaller one, and they'd still have a streamline of where they want to go, but they'd go all these other avenues, and it get them excited. Introverted intuition is a river that goes straight down, and then at the end of it, it branches out like a tree, and then goes into one big cloud, which is where everything connects. So extrovert intuition would be people that bounce around a lot. As you can see, this whole video, I've bounced around. I've had a hard time staying on track. I've done my best. It's probably better than what I'm thinking, hopefully. I'm very hypercritical. So extrovert intuition, as you can see from what I just did, I bounced left and right, got off topic, just like right now. Extrovert intuition, you're always thinking of something different. Introverted thinking for your beginning means you're going to be way more introspective. You're going to be really analyzing yourself, analyzing the environment, really breaking it down and understanding it for yourself. And introverted thinking by itself means you're always working on something. It's not outward though, which means nobody's going to really be able to tell what's going on in your head. You'll have more of a deadpan stare, most likely, not in a bad way. You're really figuring shit out. Extroverted feeling as your first means just that your emotions are outward and you're leading with that shit, which means you're probably more people oriented. Extroverted feeling means you care more about people than a lot of times yourself, and you give more of yourself than you give back to yourself. So you'll run yourself ragged taking care of other people before you take care of your own needs. That's usually extroverted feeling. The life of the party, they're very, move oriented and just really active. I don't know what these movements are, but fuck it. And so that's extroverted feeling, just more life of the party, very talkative. Overall, the way they think is through emotion, so they're trying to get other people happy to make themselves happy. Introverted intuition is what I said earlier, that path, very straightforward, very on contact. Introverted intuition leading those, interesting. Only 2 types have it, just like every type. Same thing for the last function. Your first function is only shared with one other type, so 2 types per 1 lead function. No repeats. So introverted intuition, the 2 types that have this, have a very far away look to their eyes, almost like a dream state, and that's because they live in their heads much more than everybody else. And because of this, when the real world come in contact with them, which is their last function, extroverted sensing, the world's coming in, really gathering that information, it throws them off because they've been living in the future, in the far, far future. They do think about now, but they break it down within this huge web of understanding. So bringing the real world to them breaks them of this almost trance-like state they naturally live in, which ruins them. So introverted intuition is going to be a faraway stare. They're going to keep on contact, but they are more about the here and now, which then promotes their view of what the future could be. It's very interesting. There's a lot more to go over, but I'm running on almost fucking 30 minutes here. This is the longest video I've made. Leave comments if you have any ideas on what I should do next. Leave a comment saying if this sucked. I'd really like to know if I explained this well. I'm very critical, so I need to, fucking know. So leave a comment. I hope you enjoyed it, and I guess I'll catch you on the next one.